Hey everybody, welcome back. Garry Adelman, American Battlefield Trust. There's Kris behind the camera. Our group has grown. I don't know if you'll get to see them all on this video, but before long you will. We have moved eastward into a land of colorful characters today, and in the Civil War, a whole lot more history. We're on the Gilgal Church battlefield. Now, many of you haven't heard of Gilgal Church, but I hope you learn a little bit more about it as a result of learning about this video. This is part of a new important line, yet another one for Joseph E. Johnston that he's going to take up between Sherman's army and Atlanta. This is before Kennesaw Mountain. We're talking about action in mid-June, right in the middle of June, here at Gilgal Church. And many of you may have only heard of this place called Golgotha Church by Sam Watkins himself, where he describes Lucius Polk's wounding here, and wow, his black locks flowing in the breeze, and how he would have looked like a woman if it wasn't for his great mustache and facial hair. But I think we're going to get into a little bit more. Why is Johnston here, and what actually goes on here? To get into some of that, we're going to talk to Kris of the American Battlefield Trust. Come on, Kris.
Golgotha, that's a great term. It means a place of skulls. So think about it. That's a biblical term he's gone back to. He's actually referring to Gilgal Church, which is was behind us. You might be able to hear one of the roads going right beside us, but Gilgal Church was actually destroyed during the battle. It's taken down log by log by Confederate soldiers. And we're talking in an area between June 15th and June 17th, 1864. So to back up just a little bit, we were just along the Pickett's Mill, New Hope Church, Dallas line. We've now fallen back, if we're Joseph Johnston and the Confederate Army of Tennessee, and we have fallen back to a new line. And Garry actually has a map here. So what you're looking at here is Gilgal Church right here. I'm doing this looking through. So we also have Lost Mountain down here. This is going to be the new line of Lost Mountain on my right. Jutting out as a salient position is a line called Pine Mountain. We're going to have another video there.
And note that Kris is using his middle finger. Coincidence?
It's for Gustavus W. Smith. So watch another video and you'll know. And then we have Brush Mountain over here off to my left. So what we have is a new line here that has been established, and unfortunately for the Confederates, this Pine Mountain is actually a salient position. And salient position in military terms is a portion of your line that protrudes outward. Think of, everyone hates when I use this term, think of a pimple on your skin. It's a bubbly point that comes out. So what you have from a salient position is a point that protrudes outward, meaning that whenever you fire from that position, you have diverging artillery fire that's diluting your fire. And then if you're on top of that hill, you can have converging artillery fire. So that's going to bring everything right down, raining on top of you. So eventually what is going to happen is that Johnston, in another video, we'll talk about this, is actually going to get his line on a single line, as it were, pull off of Pine Mountain. There's a good reason he does so. He's nearly killed up on top of Pine Mountain alongside two of his corps commanders, one who does fall. And as he falls back into this area, he is going to be stabilizing the line a little bit more. Now Sherman, William T. Sherman, commanding that army group that's moving down in this direction, the Army of the Ohio, the Army of the Cumberland, the Army of the Tennessee, as they're moving down into this area, he is going to start ordering attacks to go forward. One of the corps he'll send forward is the Pius but Vapid Oliver Otis Howard's 4th Corps. Then you'll have John Palmer's 14th Corps, Army of the Cumberland. But moving down in this direction where we're standing, we're going to have, once again, that hard hitter of the Army of the Cumberland, and that's Joe Hooker's, Fighting Joe Hooker's 20th Corps, Army of the Cumberland. The Hadley, Massachusetts native, so far has been carrying a lot of water here for William T. Sherman's army group as they move south towards Atlanta. Now, what we're going to start to see down here is a deployment of Union soldiers in and behind Kris, who's behind the camera, and we're going to see the divisions of Dan Butterfield. Everybody who watches the Gettysburg movie knows Dan Butterfield, because good old Tom Chamberlain's sitting there saying Dan Butterfield with his whole taps thing. But then we also have John White Garry, whose division is going to be down to my right, and that would be Butterfield's left. And they're going to be pointed towards Gilgal Church, which once stood behind us. Confederate artillery position back there, as well as Pat Cleburne and some of his men. If you find hard fighting in the Atlanta campaign, you're probably going to find sometimes Garry's division, but you almost always find Pat Cleburne and his division that are being deployed. So what ends up happening is the Confederates, as usual, during this campaign, fortify their position, and that's what they have to do. We'll put some of the recreated fortifications up on the screen down at Gilgal Church. That is not the church you're going to see on the screen. That's actually an 1880s era schoolhouse that's on the site now. That is not what Gilgal Church would look like, because again, it is destroyed destroyed during the battle. So coming across these fields in 1864 are going to be Butterfield's men, John White Garry and his men. As they start to come forward across the fields, they're actually going to be shot down. A lot of artillery fire. They're going to take a lot of small arms fire, and eventually they're going to come to ground right about where we're standing. Here we're going to see some great earthen fortifications along this property that we have here near the intersection of Due West Road, which we joked about runs northeast when you drive up here. So as we were coming down the road, we were joking about that. But this is going to be a static action that's going to stop the federal advance cold here along this line. Now, to make a very long story short, this line is not going to hold for much longer, because what Johnston is going to fear is the fact that Sherman is going to get around his flank and start threatening Marietta, Georgia, and that is what's going to induce him to yet again pull back that Army of Tennessee, now back to Kennesaw Mountain. Big Kennesaw, Little Kennesaw, eventually Pigeon Hill, and then what we'll call Cheatham Hill. So we are going to be coming up towards the gates of Atlanta. We're going to have the Chattahoochee River on the east side of Kennesaw Mountain, and those are about going to be our last barriers here. But here along this portion of the line, it's a very forgotten, I think, action of the Atlanta campaign along this Pine Mountain, Lone Mountain, Brushy Mountain line. So it's a really cool site if you ever get a chance to come down to Gilgal Church, which is not actually the church, it's a schoolhouse, but check out the historical marker that's down there, as well as some of the recreated works. Gary? Yep.
Thanks, Kris. I think, it's worth learning about this stuff, and I think before long you might know a little bit more about this. There's more to preserve around here. How many times do we have to hear that the Atlanta campaign is gone before we stop and see hundreds of acres at Pickett's Mill, and hundreds of acres at Rocky Face Ridge, and 1,000 acres and more at Resaca? And I still think there's some opportunities around here where Gilgal Church and this sort of Brushy Mountain, Pine Mountain line can be preserved. And with the help of people like the Georgia Battlefields Association, we've been talking about them the whole trip. We're honored to have Charlie Crawford with us now, although he's not coming on quite yet. We have some other guests joining us, and with them and the Atlanta History Center, we have a good amount of preserved land around here to interpret it and to have some of these trenches preserved here. So thanks for joining us at yet another site. We have more to come still, not the least of which is Pine Mountain, Kennesaw Mountain, a little bit of Cobb's Farm, some museums ahead of us, as well as Peachtree Creek, the Battle of Atlanta, and hopefully even more. Maybe we'll even eat during that time if we're lucky. And we really appreciate you joining us and for all of your support of battlefield preservation and education.